Hey everyone, this is Sandeep and I'm back with another video, or I would say I'm back with another video series. So this is just a small announcement that I would like to make. So I'm going to start a new series on React. So this is a new course on Learn React in 10 days. Yes. So I'm going to cover a lot of ground in React in 10 days. I think we can cover a lot of things in React in 10 days. That's possible. So each video is going to be like 30 minutes to 1 hour or maybe more than 1 hour long. I'm going to post these videos in upcoming weeks, and I'm going to cover a lot of important topics around React in this series. So this course is going to be completely practical. I'm back with all the practical example. There will be projects and a lot of exciting things. So I think let's not waste more time. Let's come back to the journey, the roadmap of this particular course. So I want to share the roadmap. So we are going to start with quick introduction about React, and then we will quickly jump into the setup. We'll do the setup. We'll make the playground first, and then we'll start with the first topic on the day one, that is JSX. Then we will move on to the props. So these are, step-by-step topics that I'm going to cover in this entire course: classes, state, lifecycle methods, forms and events, making API requests, building list, refs, and finally we are going to make a big or medium size, not big, medium size application, but it's going to cover a lot of ground. Like how to write application in real world. It will help you write application in your current organization, or this course is really going to help you learn React very well. So I'm going to cover very important topics around React. So let's first start with this series. Maybe I'll come up with another series related to Redux also. So let's not talk about it that for now. Let's talk about React. So React in 10 days. I'm really excited about this series, and I really need your feedback, your suggestions. So just go through some of the videos, and you can post in the comment and tell me how the series is going. Are you expecting something else? If you have any suggestions, feel free to do so. And I think quickly we can get started. Okay, so first things first. First, we need to understand what is React. So I'm going to quickly cover about React here, and as the course is going to progress, you will know more about React. And writing code, getting experience with the technology is more important, and you get to know as you get along with the technology what it is really and why we use that particular technology. So React is basically a JavaScript library used for making user interfaces. So this is a logo of React. React has been created by Facebook. Facebook is one of the popular social media website, if you know, or web application. So React is a JavaScript library. So JavaScript is one of the programming languages, very popular. So React is created using JavaScript. So React is written on top of a JavaScript, and we use React for create user interfaces, or I would say web applications. It's very popular around web application, but we can use React to create mobile applications as well. So we don't use a React to create mobile application. There is a different technology which is like similar to React. It has been written on top of React, called React Native. So you can use React Native to create mobile application. So yeah, so web application, I can give you some of the example like YouTube, Facebook, PayPal, Airbnb, Instagram. All of these are some of the examples of web application. And if you don't know, Facebook heavily uses React. Even Instagram has been written using React, and even React Native. PayPal uses React heavily. So there are a lot of companies who are using React. So learning React is not all wrong decision, I can say. If you learn React, it's definitely going to help you in the long run. So this is about React. Now let's move on and talk about prerequisite for this course, which I'm going to cover in 10 days. So if you know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, these are three different technologies. If you know them already, this course is like a cakewalk. I mean, this course will really help you learn React easily, because I'm not going to explain about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. maybe some part of JavaScript I'm going to cover, but this is a React course, so I'm not going to cover all these three different technologies. So if you already know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, that's well and good, and you are good to follow. I have, by the way, I have created a series on JavaScript, a beginner series on JavaScript. I'm going to post the link in the description. If you're interested in learning JavaScript, you can follow that playlist. So I have covered all the basics of JavaScript in that particular series. So I'm going to post that link in the description. And if you're interested, you can check that. Cool. So this is prerequisite for this course. Let's move on and quickly do the setup. So we need to do the setup. Setup is like a playground. So we are going to create a playground for writing a lot of React code. So we are going to move on and talk about setup. So the first of all, you need a code editor because we are going to write a lot of code, and there are a lot of code editors in the market. You must be knowing some of them. If you don't know, I'm going to use VS Code. VS Code stands for Visual Studio Code. So this is a link which you can copy and paste in your browser. So maybe if this link doesn't work, probably you can just type Visual Studio Code in the browser, and this is the first link you can click, and you can see somewhere on the page there will be a download link. So you just need to use that download link, download the software, install the software. Installing software is really easy. I'm not going to cover it uh, in this course. Probably you can search for other video. If you are really beginner and you don't understand how to install software, you can search how to install Visual Studio Code on YouTube, and you can get a video about it. So I have already installed Visual Studio Code in my machine, so I'm not going to do that. So this is first thing you need to download and install Visual Studio Code. This is a fantastic code editor that we are going to use throughout this course. Next, moving on, you need Node. Node.js is another technology I can say, which is like JavaScript on the server side. And again, I'm not going to talk about Node in detail in this course. So basically you just need to download Node. Also, you can use this link, or you can open a new tab in the browser, and you just go ahead and search for the Node.js. You're going to get this link, click on this link, and yeah, it's like installing another software. So you just need to install the Node. So click on any of the link, install the software. Once you have Node, you can check that like whether Node has been installed in your machine or not. So you just need to open a terminal for that. So I have my terminal open here. So you just need to open terminal, and something is running here. Maybe I'll open a new tab here, and you can just check Node. You just need to run this command after you have installed a Node to check whether Node is there or not. Node dash dash version, and press enter. And if you see something like this, V12, 18, I mean, it depends. I mean, while making this video or when I have installed Node in my machine, I had installed 12.18.4 version. You might be having a different version. So if you have Node and if you get the Node version, you are all set to go. You have Node installed on your machine. So we are good with from the Node side. So this is another software you need. First, we need Visual Studio Code, which is a code editor, and then we need Node. So once we have Node and Visual Studio Code in your machine, next step is we need to create a React app. So we can create a React app from this scratch. So this is what is create React app. Basically, it's a playground. It's a playground where we are going to write React code. So I'm not going to start from the scratch and create that playground. We already have a ready-made playground created by React team. So Facebook has created React, and the smart developers at Facebook, they have created this create React app also. So we are going to use create React app, and we are going to create all our projects where we are going to work on using this simple command, npx create react app. So you just need to copy this command. So you just need to open the terminal, copy this command, and we are going to create a brand new React project. I mean, you just follow along whatever I'm saying in front of my screen. So I'm going to go back to terminal, or probably I'm going to go back to my Finder, and I have a folder created. I'm going to open a terminal here. So let me see. I'm going to open a terminal tab. So now I'm in this Learn React in 10 days folder, and here I'm going to type that command npx create. So you just need to follow me, React app. So this is a command which I'm going to use, npx create react app. So this is going to create the React application, all the folder structure, all the files, everything will be created automatically, ready to use, and we don't need to bother about creating all those things. So you need to write npx create react app, and this is like a command. I'm giving a command, and next we need to give the name of the application which we want to create. So obviously we're going to talk about JSX in this video. So we're going to start with JSX. So I'm going to create a new project, new React app called JSX, and I'm just going to press enter. And if everything goes happily, everything goes well, okay, so I got the error, cannot create a project name JSX because of npm naming restriction, capital letters. Okay, so probably I need to change my project name to JSX. Let's try this. And it is going to take some time. So I'm going to fast forward my video from here. Okay, cool. So if everything goes well and if you don't get any error, you're going to see this message at the end called happy hacking. So the project has been created. I can show you that. So we can go back to the Finder, and if you see here, I got this folder created with a lot of different files. This is what I was telling you. We don't need to create all of these files, all of these source files. We're not going to use the source files, but this public folder, this package.json, and we are not going to install all of this node modules by ourselves. All of this has been taken care by React, create React app. So this is really great tool, to create any of the React application. Now we have our project created. I'm just going to open this project in Visual Studio. So I'm going to open Visual Studio, and let's open this folder here. So I'm just going to go to File, Open, and I need to go to that particular folder here, this JSX. I'm going to open this JSX project in my Visual Studio Code, and we are going to start from the scratch. We don't need all of these files, but if you just want to check whether your project is running or not, you can check that. So we will come back to the terminal window, and you just need to run this npm start command. And once you click, and if everything goes right, okay, sorry, actually I need to move into the project folder first. So I need to do cd JSX. Okay, now we are in the project folder, and now I'm going to run npm start. And if everything goes right, you see this, something is already running. So probably something is already running on 3000 port. Let me close my existing application first. I think something is already running. So I need to close that. So let me close this one. Cool. So I think we are good to go. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to say no. And once again, I'm going to run npm start. So you just need to run npm start. You are not going to get that error which I have got. And if everything goes right, let's come back to our terminal. You see here, right? Our application is running on localhost 3000. So I'm going to open localhost 3000 and see that our React application, the first application, is running in the browser. Now I'm not going to use all of this user interface, this logo, and it's saying like edit source app.js and save to reload. So I'm not going to use all of this interface, this project. So I'm going to start from scratch. So I'll go back to my Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to remove all of these files. So you just need to delete all of these files, and we are going to start from the scratch. So I think we are done with the setup. Let's take a quick break here, and we'll start from scratch. We'll talk about JSX. JSX is really interesting technology, or interesting language, I can say, which smart developers at Facebook created. So we are going to talk about JSX. So let's take a quick break, come back, refresh your mind, and we'll start with the JSX. Hey guys, welcome back after a short break. I actually took a long break and came back. That's okay. So we can quickly get started with our first and the important topic called building content with JSX. So if you are planning to create a web applications, mobile applications, or anything related to web, right? We basically create content, right? We combine text content with video, audio, and images, and a lot of other things. So in this video, we are basically going to talk about building content with JSX. Now JSX is something new that Facebook has created. So let's go through the agenda for what's going to come next. So we are going to talk about building content with JSX. So we are going to see like how we can use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to our advantage. Now, obviously for web, we use HTML, CSS. We're going to talk about how JSX is actually equals to combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We're going to see how we can take the existing HTML and convert it into a JSX. And we're going to see how we can use JavaScript in JSX, how we can use CSS in JSX. And finally, with all of this knowledge, we are going to put that into practice. So this video is really going to get interesting. So let's move on and let's get started with web first. So I'm going to talk about web first. So let me increase the, okay. So if you're new to technology, if you don't know what is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, then it's going to be a bit difficult, to understand what I'm trying to say here. But if you know HTML, you know CSS, you know JavaScript, this is going to be interesting. I mean, like how the story unfolds, I'm just trying to set the context first before moving into the JSX, before moving and talking about JSX. I really want to talk about these three very popular technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So HTML, you think of these three technologies, like three different superheroes, I can say. So take example of HTML. HTML has some skills, like how the superheroes has some skills, some specialities, right? So HTML has this speciality of creating content. So we use HTML for creating content. So HTML is good at creating content. So we write all those tags for creating content, like heading tag, right? The image tag, the video tag, the audio tag. There are a lot of different tags we use for creating content using HTML. So this is a good part about HTML, but what is a bad part about HTML? HTML is static. Static, I mean, static means it doesn't have movement. That's what the opposite I can say. So, I mean, HTML, once you have written something, it will be there. You can't change it. I mean, you can't update it at runtime. I mean, if you want to change it, you basically need to edit and upload it again on the web if someone else has to see it. So this is the problem with HTML. HTML is good at creating content, but HTML is static. Let's talk about the next superhero, that is CSS, cascading style sheet. If you don't know about HTML, HTML is hypertext markup language. So CSS, cascading style sheet. CSS, our next superhero, I can say, is good at presentation, is good at creating a layout. So we create content, we decorate, we add beauty to our content, our HTML content, our text, images, or videos using CSS. So CSS is good at presentation. CSS is good at creating a layout. So this is a specialty. This is the important thing I want to tell you about CSS. But there's a problem. Again, I mean, CSS is static. Now there is a star I have put there, because if you know keyframe animation, right? I don't know. I mean, if we can consider keyframe animation as something dynamic, we might get confused with that. I mean, that animation is dynamic, right? So that's why I put a star there. So that might be something dynamic, but we actually write it down in the CSS only. So I'll consider CSS as static once again. So we talked about HTML, we talked about CSS. HTML good for creating content, but it's static. CSS good for presentation layout, but again, it's static. So we need someone. We need a third superhero which can play which can come up with the which can come up with the disadvantages, I can say. I mean, the powers which HTML CSS doesn't have, which is what is actually going to add the power or give power to HTML and CSS. So we got our third superhero, JavaScript. So JavaScript can make things dynamic. JavaScript can add action into things. So this is a technology which was created long back, and it's a really popular technology. If you don't know, I have a series on JavaScript. I have a beginner series on JavaScript. I'm going to put the link in the description. Please go and watch that. It's really going to help. I mean, JavaScript is a fantastic technology. So JavaScript is our third superhero. JavaScript can make things dynamic. JavaScript can add action to our content. But again, there's a disadvantage. I mean, if something has good, something has bad also. But creating HTML and CSS using JavaScript is bad. I mean, that's not good. So we talked about this three different technology. So JavaScript, so creating HTML and CSS using JavaScript is bad. I mean, if you know JavaScript, if you try to create HTML part in JavaScript, I mean, if you try to use the strength of strength of HTML in JavaScript, it's tough. I mean, creating HTML and writing CSS in JavaScript is bad. And if I talk about, long back when we started writing web application, writing HTML and CSS in JavaScript is considered as a bad thing. But I'm going to come to that. I'm going to come to that point. The story is going to reveal, right? I mean, I'm just trying to set the context. So now we know about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These three superheroes you can think of, these three different technologies, and these three different technologies have their own potential, their own strength. So the smart people, I mean, the smart developers or smart people at Facebook, I can say, they come up with something called JSX. We already have three superheroes. Think about them, think of them like if we combine their potential together and if we come up with something new. I mean, take the good parts of HTML. HTML is good for creating content. So let's take HTML. Let's take the potential of HTML. Okay, you're good at creating content. Let me take that part. CSS, the good part about CSS is CSS is good at presentation and creating layout of our application. So let's take the potential of CSS and JavaScript, which can make things dynamic, which can add action into our content. And let's take the potential, let's take the advantages, let's take the strengths of all of these three different technologies together and create something new. Something new, something a technology, a new technology, or some new language. So that new language, that new technology, which something I think of is called JSX. JSX is nothing but combination of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. JSX is nothing but taking the strength of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, putting it together to create content. So we're going to see like how we can write JSX. This is a new technology, I can say, which Facebook has created, and we are going to see how we can use JSX, how we can use strength of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript together. So I think this is a good time to run to our code editor and let's try to see how we can write JSX. And this is going to be interesting. So let's go to our code editor and start doing some practice. Okay. So now I am in my code editor, but before going into my code editor, I want to show you something. So I think we can go back to the browser first, and I'm going to open the code pen site here. So I'm going to open code pen. So this is a really good code editor online where you can go and you can practice your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So I'm going to start with JavaScript. Let me make it quite big. I mean, zoom in a little bit so that you can see it, right? So let me do this. I mean, I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going to do something really crazy, I can say. So I'm going to create a variable called text, and let me try to assign some HTML to this particular variable in JavaScript. So I'm doing something different here. I'm writing HTML in JavaScript. So this is a JS tab, and so I'm writing HTML in JavaScript. So hello JS or hello world, I can say. I'm just writing something crazy. But this is not going to work, obviously, because I cannot write HTML in JavaScript. So if you see here, if you come back here, you see that syntax error because JavaScript is not allowing me to write HTML because this is not a syntax of JavaScript. JavaScript doesn't understand this less than sign. JavaScript has its own grammar, its own way of writing code. So we need to basically we cannot write anything in JavaScript. We need to follow the grammar of JavaScript. We need to follow the syntax of JavaScript. That's how it is going to work. And giving HTML to JavaScript is definitely not going to work. But now I'm going to come back. I'm going to try the similar thing in my React project here. Now this is a special project. So if you haven't watched the setup video, I highly recommend you watch the setup part of this video. I mean, not the separate video, part of this video where we did the setup, where we have created a React project. So please go and watch that. So this is a special kind of project. This is just not a normal JavaScript project. This is a React project. So it got React setup. So I'm going to create a new file here called index.js. Okay. And let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so now I'm going to try the similar thing here, and then we are going to run this project. Let me see if it is already running. So I'm going to go back to my terminal, and you see like this is already running. Probably the same project. So I'm going to check localhost 3000. So I'm going to run my project here, localhost 3000, and I'm going to check if I'm getting any errors or not. So I don't have any errors here. Let me minimize a bit. And actually I need to zoom. I don't need to zoom this part for now. If I come to the console, we don't see any error, right? So this application is running fine. Now I'll come back and I'm going to write the same code, whatever I have written here in CodePen. So when I was writing this h1 tag, this hello world, this text in JavaScript, it's not understanding it. It's saying, I don't understand. This is not JavaScript. You're giving me something else. Let's try the same thing and see the output here. So I'm going to go back to my Visual Studio Code and I'm going to write the same code, const text is equals to an h1 tag and hello world. And now I'm going to save it. I know it is going to compile, and just for our confirmation, I'm just going to put one console log here so that we should know like, okay, this application is working. So I'm going to write hello world again here. And now if I save and if I go back to my browser and refresh, see that the hello world is getting output here, but it's not giving me any error, right? That's surprising, right? This text is, I mean, forget this is just a warning from the webpack, but we are not getting the similar error which we were getting here. Unexpected token this less than sign. Can you see that error here? No, we are not getting the similar error. That's what I'm trying to tell you, because I'll come back to my code again and let's remove this. We know that the application is working. I'm going to put the semicolon here. If you see here, I can write HTML in JavaScript. Now think about the potential, think about the facilities you're getting. If you can write HTML in JavaScript, so you're already using the strength, the potential of HTML, and you're using the potential of JavaScript also together. So if I can write HTML like this, and if I combine it with JavaScript, and we are going to see that in just a time being, that how I can change this text, how I can use the potential of JavaScript here. So the first thing is sorted. Now you can write HTML like syntax, or you can use the strength of HTML in JavaScript. So we have solved our first problem, I can say, okay, for creating the content. Now let's see how we can render this hello world, right? Because in HTML, if I write this hello world, if I take this h1 tag from here and if I go back to my browser, I need to go back to my browser actually. And if I come here, I know I can't write this here, but I can write here, right? I can write it in HTML. So I can say h1, h1, and I can say hello world here. And you will be able to see the output here. Okay. Now the first thing, creating content. Now I told you HTML is good at creating content. HTML is good at writing content, but HTML is bad because it's static. Now this hello world, if I want to change this hello world at runtime without doing anything, okay, I cannot do that. That's not possible. If I need to change this hello world to hello someone else, right? Hello React or hello JavaScript, I need to actually write that text React into HTML. Then only it is going to work, right? I need a way, some way, so that I can change this text at runtime, maybe on a click of a button. Maybe I'm loading this data, this text from the server side, and I want to change it at runtime. That's not possible just using HTML, right? So we need the potential, we need the strength of other technology called JavaScript. So the first thing is sorted. I know I can write HTML in JavaScript, but this is not HTML. Once again, I'm saying this is not HTML. This is something called JSX. And we got the first strength, right? I can write HTML in it. Okay. So I can tell you like why this is not HTML, this is JSX, because behind the scene, someone has written a program. Maybe it is in Facebook. I keep telling it is in Facebook. So JSX is basically, I mean, it's part of React. So someone from Facebook team or other team, someone has created a program which convert this language, this tag based language into JavaScript. Okay, so I can show you that. So I can take this h1. So I'll go back to my presentation actually, and I'll show you. So what's happening here basically, this h1 tag, this text, and this is that special technology. This is again a technology. This is again a program which other people, a lot of people are writing programs nowadays. Other people have written, they have, and that program is called Babel. So this JSX, this is JSX, okay? So this JSX is actually getting converted into JavaScript. That's why it's rendering. That's why it is working in .js file, right? Because this is not HTML. This is JavaScript. This is getting converted by Babel into something like this, and this is JavaScript. So React is a object, dot create element is a function, h1 is a tag, then this is another argument. So basically I'm calling all of this create element function. So basically what's happening, it's getting converted into all of this create element calls behind the scene, right? You're trying to understand what I'm trying to say. So let's see how this text is getting converted in JavaScript really. So you just need to go to Babel, search for the Babel IO, and you're going to get this link. Just go here and click on this try it out button. And you see here, I mean, it's already written there, right? So I'm going to change it to paste it hello world. See here, this is JavaScript. This is JSX, this is JavaScript. And to make it happen, to make this work, you just need to select this React part here, and you can select other option if you want, but this is the one option which you need to select. So you're getting my point. See this HTML looking like language, which is actually a JSX, is getting converted into create element calls, all of those create element calls. Now you must be thinking, man, for writing such a small text, I mean, Why can't we use just react.create element and write a hello world something like this? But this is just a small hello world h1 tag. Imagine I have a big HTML, right? I have a div. Okay, I have a div, and inside that div, I have this h1, and to cut it actually and paste it here. Okay, and not only h1, I have a paragraph also. Some paragraph text. See that? Now everything, all of this HTML is getting converted into JavaScript. React.create element for div, React.create element for h1, React.create element for p. This is just a small chunk of HTML I have written here, but while creating web application, we are going to have a bigger text, or this is not going to be such small div h1 and p. We are going to have bigger forms, we are going to have bigger charts, right? Dashboard, I mean, there is a lot. We are going to have images, we're going to have videos, a lot of things. And writing this is easy, and this looks beautiful actually. I mean, you can look at it and you can understand it, but looking at this create element call is going to confuse you. Remember, what is the specialty of HTML? HTML is good at content. So let's take that specialty and we are putting that specialty here. And that specialty is getting converted into JavaScript. And why it is getting converted into JavaScript, I'm going to talk about it. So when you look at this div h1 paragraph, you understand it. Okay, this is just a section of a page where I'm saying hello world and I have written some paragraph, which is getting converted into JavaScript. But when you look at this JavaScript, this is difficult to understand. I mean, all of this create element call is difficult to understand. So some of the smart developers, they took the potential strength of HTML, right? And they have written it, right? Okay, use HTML for creating content. So the first problem got sorted. Now we will move on and we'll see like how, now you're getting the idea, right? How things are getting converted here. Okay. And how we have used strength of HTML for creating content. We are able to create content, and behind the scene that content is getting converted into all of this create element call. But the next point, the important point is how we are going to render it, right? Like I have written this here. If I come back to CodePen, I can see this hello world here, but when I come back to my React application, I don't see that hello world here, right? So if I refresh the page, I don't see that. How we are going to render that? Okay, so to render what we have created in JSX, what we have written in JSX, we use something called React DOM. So React DOM is another object, I can say, of JavaScript, and it got a function called render, which we can use to render the content, the JSX content, which looks like HTML. Okay, to render into the DOM. DOM is the browser. So it got a render method. We are going to use that render method. We need to pass two different arguments to it. The first one is the JSX element, which we want to render, and second, where you want to render it. Okay, so first is what you want to render it, and second is where you want to render it. So we're going to see that. So I'm going to first of all import React DOM here. So import React DOM. This is another JavaScript object which I'm importing from a package called React DOM. And I'm going to use React DOM to render my JSX, this text content. So I'm going to write React DOM dot, as I said, there is a render method. So I'm going to use this render method to render. The first argument to this render method is the JSX element. So what I'm doing to render, I want to render my text, this h1, this JSX. Okay, I want to render this h1 element into the DOM. So I'm saying React DOM dot render, take this text and render it. But where? Where I want to render it. So obviously we need some HTML page to render this content. And we can do that. We already have a HTML page here. If you see here inside the public folder, when we have created, when we have scaffolding, or I think when we have created this project, create React app has already created the HTML file for us. And this HTML file is nothing but what is getting rendered here, what you see on the screen. So we already have HTML, and in that HTML, we have an element called a div with ID of root. So I'm going to render my JSX, I'm going to render my content inside this root. So first we need to target this root. So I'm going to use JavaScript here. Document dot get element by ID, and I'm going to target that root element. So I'm saying, hey, React DOM, you take my text and render or display or show into the DOM, but where? Inside this root, inside this div, which is part of this HTML. So now if I save it and if we come back, and I think I need to refresh because somehow auto refresh is not working. See that? What we were having here using HTML is possible using this new language. This is JSX. You see that? See, the story is still continuing. I mean, we don't know the entire power of JSX yet, right? We have used the first strength, writing content using HTML. So now you got the power, you got the potential of writing the content in HTML in JavaScript. And I think this is a good time where we are going to take a break. But I'm trying to explain once again, we are using a new technology, a new language, which is called JSX, and where we can write HTML kind of language. We can take that HTML and we can render into the DOM. Okay, we can render it into the browser. Now we know how to write content using HTML in JavaScript, and we are writing everything in JavaScript. So we can use JavaScript inside HTML. And this is really going to get interesting as we move along in this video. So be with me. I think this is a good time. Let's take a quick break. I'm going to take a quick break, and we are going to come back and we are going to see like how we can use JavaScript in JSX. So I'll come back and we'll discuss about it. Well, welcome back again. So I think we had a good quick break, I can say, and taking break is really important while learning something. So we can get started and we'll okay, so let's move on to the video. So now we know a bit about JSX, right? And we know how to write JSX. So if you see here, this HTML like syntax, which I have written here, is JSX. So I will go back to my presentation once again. And if I go back to Facebook, like we were talking about JSX, right? So JSX is like a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So we know HTML is good for creating content, and we have used that strength, the strength of HTML in JSX. And we have seen that example here, right? I've written some kind of HTML here, and we have seen like how we can render this particular HTML-ish style syntax, which we call JSX, using React DOM.render and using the text and document.get element by ID, I'm rendering the content into the DOM. Now let's move on and come up with the problems with HTML, right? We had a problem. HTML is static. So if you see here, right, where I've shown you, right, HTML is good for creating content, but HTML is static. Now we need to see like how we can make HTML dynamic. And to make HTML dynamic, we use a technology, we use a programming language called JavaScript. So JavaScript can make things dynamic. And we know like creating HTML and CSS using JavaScript is bad. That's why the team at Facebook has created JSX. So let's see how we can write JavaScript inside our JSX. And this is going to be interesting. So we are going to take the same element or the same example that we have created right now. So I'm going to convert this hello React text. This text, once I have written a text in HTML, it's static. If I want to change it, I have to go and delete it. Say, suppose I want to change it, right? I need to remove this exclamation mark. I have to go and do something like this, right? This is the way I can change HTML, and then I need to redeploy the application. Then only this HTML thing is going to work. But if I can use JavaScript, which add dynamism to my HTML. So if I can use JavaScript, I can create variables, I can write functions, and I can use all of the potential of JavaScript to make my static content dynamic. And we can do that. How we can write JavaScript in JSX? So you just need to remember this simple syntax. You just need to use these two curly brackets, and whatever goes inside those curly bracket is JavaScript. But there is a condition here. You don't think like you can write all of an entire JavaScript language inside these two curly brackets. No, you cannot do that. So let's see how we can take out this string, this hello React string, from our h1 element. We are going to put it into a constant, a variable, a constant, I would say, where we are going to create a constant, and we are going to put this hello React text into that constant, and then we are going to insert that JavaScript const or a variable or anything like that into our HTML. So let's do that in practice. So let me come back to my editor. What I'm going to do here, so I'm just going to create a variable or a constant, and I'm going to call it str, or maybe we can call it hello str. Okay, and I'm going to take this text from here, this hello world, and I'm going to put it here. So hello world, okay, or hello React, whatever it is. So now I have created a JavaScript constant hello string which has a value of hello world, and I want to use this hello string inside my JSX. As I told you, to use JavaScript inside your JSX, you just need to use two curly brackets. And whatever goes inside this is kind of JavaScript. So now I can use this hello string here. And if I save, and if I go back to my browser and refresh my application, you're going to see that hello world there. Or maybe I need to change it to something else. So let's try changing this to hello React. And I'm going to save, come back, and refresh my application. See that? You see the power of JavaScript inside JSX? So what I'm trying to tell you here, right? We are using the strength of different technology inside one common technology called JSX. That's why I'm saying JSX is so beautiful. I mean, whoever thought of creating it. So now we have HTML. You can see these HTML elements. I can use any of the HTML element, whichever I want, and I can use JavaScript inside my JSX. So basically, I'm taking the strength of HTML, which is like creating content, and I know this looks good. I mean, this heading one. So I'm saying inside heading one, okay, you render or you show this hello React text. Right now, this hello React or this hello string is just a JavaScript variable which I have hard coded here. But later on, we can load this string from the database. We can have an API call, and we are going to see that. We are going to call an API call. We are going to load this text from the database, and we can show it here. So we have made our static HTML an addition of JavaScript. So I'm using just one technology called JSX, and I'm combining the strength of HTML, strength of JavaScript, combining together and producing this output. Now you can try writing some different kind of JavaScript here, right? Maybe I can call a math.random function here, right? Inside this, as I said, you can write JavaScript inside these two curly brackets. So why not call a function? So you can you can use the math object of JavaScript, and you can call a random function. And if I save it and if I go back and refresh my application, somehow it is not auto refreshing. See that? I can see the value of math.random function here. So we are adding that dynamic, that action element into our HTML, right? So it doesn't mean, as I said, you can't just go ahead and write anything here. Maybe you're thinking, okay, now I got the potential, now I can use any of the JavaScript inside my JSX. As you said, you just need to put these two curly brackets and write JavaScript into it. But as I said, you can't write everything here. Like you can just go ahead and do something like if one equals to one or something like this, then do this. No, you can't do this. If I go back and refresh, you see here, right? This is not allowed. So you can't go ahead and write any kind of logic inside these two curly brackets, right? So there are limitations to it. And as we move along with this course or with this video series, we are going to we are going to write more JSX. We are going to have more practice around it. And you're going to see like how it works, how we can what we can write inside these two curly brackets. So I'm going to replace it with hello string. But we can write a lot of different JavaScript here. Maybe, I can do string concatenation here. So I can write something like this. Hello React and Redux, something like this. So if I save this, so I'm doing the string concatenation here. And if I go back and refresh my application, see that hello React and Redux. So I can do all of these funny things good things about JavaScript here. And basically, I'm adding action to my HTML. So coming back to the slide, right? Facebook. HTML is good for creating content. They picked up the strength of HTML. Okay, so you can use all the HTML elements. And with that, you can add JavaScript into it. That's how this language is getting the powers of two different technologies, I can say. And we have seen on the powers of two different technologies been used in JSX. And next, we are going to discuss about like how you can add CSS into JSX. And once you have the power of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript into one single technology, you're going to reach limits, I would say. I mean, you can write different great applications, great web applications, mobile applications using React. And JSX is like a whole and soul in React. That's why I started with JSX. So I think I'm going to take a quick pause here, or I think it's a good time to take a quick break here. We'll come back and we'll see how we can use, how we can make our HTML beautiful using a very nice technology called cascading style sheets, CSS. So that's coming up next. Welcome back. So now we know like how we can write HTML and JavaScript, some part of a JavaScript inside JSX. Next, we are going to discuss about how you can write CSS. We're going to start with inline style sheet, means inline style inside our HTML or JSX, I can say. How to write inline style first inside our JSX. So I'm going to quickly jump into my presentation and I'm going to show you the example first. So we already have this hello React H1 element or hello world H1 element, which we have created. So how we write styles, inline styles. Now, there are different ways of writing CSS. There is a way of creating a different CSS file and writing classes or element or ID selector inside that. That's a different thing. But there is a way of writing inline style in CSS. So this is the way of writing inline style. So I'm just targeting the H1 element. I'm using style tag and I can give it a color of blue. So this is how we write CSS, inline CSS in the HTML. But you cannot straight away go ahead and write the style equals to color blue, something like this in the string in JSX. JSX is a different technology and it has its own grammar, right? So We can write styles. Definitely, we can write inline styles inside JSX, but there is a different way. It's a JavaScript way, basically. So we already know like how to write JavaScript. So you just need to think, in terms of like, if you look at the inline style in CSS, it's like style equals to name value pair. So color is property name or attribute name, and blue is a value, right? Which I am applying to this H1 element. You just need to convert those name and value pairs into something called a JavaScript object. So you just take all the attribute and their values, that those name and value pairs, and convert them into name value pair like object literal, and use that object literal inside using a style, obviously using a style property, and put into the curly bracket, which is like a way of writing JavaScript. So I'm basically inserting a style object, okay, using the JavaScript syntax in the JSX. So let's see how we can do it in practice. That will give you a very good idea. So what we are going to do here. So I'm going to let me first remove this. We're just going to use the hello string here. I'm going to delete this part. And first of all, I want to show you how we can do it directly here. So I'm going to use style. So we know like style properties there. So in HTML, we have a style property attribute where I can write something like this, color blue, right? This is HTML-ish or HTML syntactical way of assigning styles. So if I try to do this, say suppose I save my program here index.js, and if I go back to my browser and if I run the application, it's not working, right? The style prop expects a mapping from style properties to values, right? Not a string. It's actually uh, React is giving us some hint here, right? You shouldn't write your style properties into a string. That's what React is trying to tell you here. And they're saying, try something like this, style equals to margin right, and then something like this. So basically, they're giving us a hint. They're giving us a very good user-friendly error message here. Why don't you use object here? And if you know JavaScript, if you know how to create objects in JavaScript, you're good to go. So I can come back here and let's convert this name value pairs into JavaScript object. So I can do something like this. Or maybe I'll go with the inline way first, and then I'll tell you like how we can do it by creating a variable. So you just need to put the curly bracket. Obviously, we are using CSS, but in a JavaScript way, in a JavaScript style, right? And how to write JavaScript inside JSX? We have to use this two curly bracket. And inside this two curly bracket, you just need to pass an object. How to create an object in JavaScript? This is object literal syntax, which I'm using to create an object in JavaScript. Now, what goes inside these two curly brackets, inside this object is name and value pair. And those name value pairs are nothing but my style attributes, right? So I want to change the color of my H1 tag to something called a blue text. Or you can pass any hexadecimal value here. I'm just using the name value of a color. And you can't just pass blue like this. Because again, this blue is like a variable, right? It will try to refer to the JavaScript variable. I want to use a string blue value because that's color name I want to use here. And now if I save this and if I come back and refresh my page, see that the text color has been changed to blue. And you can go ahead and write as many styles as you want here. Like I'll give you the example, like say, suppose you want to change the background color of this H1 element. So you can you can use background color property, right? So you can write background color, but you're not going to write in CSS, in inline styling way of CSS. You write background color something like this, background dash color. But in JSX, in JavaScript, you cannot write like this because in JavaScript, this dash this sign, this hyphen is actually a minus sign. So it's trying to subtract here, background from color. So when you have property names which are like combination of two different words, you just need to convert them into camel case, something like this. I'm using background color. And let's give it a background color of, say, maybe I'll try to go with magenta probably. I don't know if it is going to look good. Let's save it. And if I come back and refresh, see that? So you can keep adding as many CSS properties as you want here. It's going to work. But writing style, creating this object inside, this is making our code, going longer, and it doesn't look more readable, I would say. So if you want to make it more readable, probably you can create an object, right? Maybe you can create a const called style object, okay? Or you can name it whatever you want. I'm just using style object here, and I'm going to create the similar object here. Like I can use color, and I can give it a color of blue. So you can keep on adding comma separated name value pairs inside the style object, right? I can use a background color, and maybe I'll go with a magenta again, right? Maybe let's try something else here. Maybe let's use a pink color. Okay, and I'm going to add one more property. Say, suppose we want to increase the font size. So I can use font size property here, and maybe I'll give it a 200 pixel or something like this. Okay, and now I can use this style object instead of creating the entire object inline inside my JSX. I'm just going to pass that style object here. And now if I save, so you see here, right? I have created the style sheet, the entire style for my H1 element here as a name value pair, object literal here. And I'm using that style object as a style value. So now if I save, if I go back to my application and refresh, see that? Hello React. The font has also increased, and this background color also I have changed. You see the beauty of JSX? We started with HTML, then we went to JavaScript, and now you can now you have started making your HTML beautiful. You're coming to the area where you're making your content, HTML content, presentable, changing the colors, changing the background color, and you can do the layout and a lot of other things. So the way we have written style here, this using the style object and using all of this name value pair, assigning that in a JavaScript way, this is a way of writing styles in an inline way. Now, there are other ways of writing styles, right? Creating a CSS file and putting your creating classes, ID selectors, and the name selectors and all those things are also possible in JSX. And we are going to see that as we move on with this video series. We are going to see that how we can use classes, how we can create different CSS files, and we can put how we can import those CSS file, and we can, instead of using the style property here, how we can use a class property. But basically we use a class name property, and I'm going to explain about it later on, why we use class name and all. So basically class is a JavaScript keyword. That's why we don't use it. We use class name. So as we move on, as we progress, I'll tell you like how we can create CSS, how we can import that particular CSS file, how we can use class names here. This is the inline way of styling element, but there is a way of creating your styles into separate file and using that in your JSX. So where we started. So let me give you a quick recap where we started. We started with the web, right? We started with HTML. We started with we're talking about three different technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And we discussed about the strength of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So HTML is good for creating content, CSS is good at presentation and layout, and JavaScript can make things dynamic. It can add dynamism to your HTML and CSS. Because HTML is static, CSS is static. But we know like creating HTML and CSS using JavaScript is bad. So the team at Facebook, they use the strength of all of these three different technologies. So they have used the strength of all of these three different superheroes, I would say, and they have created a different language called JSX. So HTML is good for creating content. CSS is good at presentation. JavaScript good in making things dynamic, adding action. Why not use all of that strength and create something new? So they created JSX, and whatever we have written till now, this is JSX. It got HTML, it got CSS, and it got JavaScript also. So you see the power of JSX, and now you know this technology, this language called JSX. We are going to use this language, this technology throughout this entire course, throughout this entire course, we are going to write a lot of JSX. And let's see how we can apply, this knowledge, whatever we have learned in real world. So let's go to any application, maybe we'll go to any online application, maybe we'll go to Instagram, we'll see, can we pick something from the Instagram and create something out of it, right? Let's go into the real world, let's pick something and let's try to implement our knowledge of JSX into the practice. So that's coming up next. I think this is a good time to have a quick break, and we'll come back and get started again. Yeah, welcome back. So now we know JSX, and it's time to put our JSX knowledge into practice. And the best way, to learn something is going into the real world, picking up things from the real world and implement that into the practice. So, I like this way where I generally like, I'll go to the Instagram, and Instagram is one of the web application I can say, and I'm going to pick up something from Instagram only, maybe this part, that part, something, whichever thing I like. So like now we would like to have our JSX knowledge into practice. So probably let's go to Instagram and let's try to create this single avatar image, this image, just this image. And let's try to create this avatar image in JSX, because this is nothing but just HTML behind the scene, HTML and JavaScript. So Instagram is also using a React. That's what I heard from the blogs. I mean, that's what I heard from the blogs, I can say. Okay, so let's put our JSX knowledge into practice. We are going to create this avatar image with this text into JSX. So I'm going to start from the scratch. So we already have this JSX project. So I'm not going to use the similar project. I'm just going to keep it for you. Maybe you can look at it later. So we are going to start from the scratch. So I'm going to create a new application from scratch. So let me go to my folder structure. I think, okay, so I have this JSX folder. So maybe I'll go back to my terminal here, and I'm going to come out of this JSX folder. Okay. And let me clear this one for first. So here again, I'm going to use create React app, and we are going to create an application from scratch. So I'm going to use this command npx. Maybe I'll zoom it a bit. Okay, npx create React app, and then we need to give the name of our app. So I think we will give it a name of JSX practice, something like this. This is the name of the project. So obviously this is going to take some time to create this project. So let's wait for that. Let's get this project created, and then we'll start working on our JSX practice. Okay, so finally our project is created. JSS practice has been created. I just need to CD into it. So I just need to go into my JSX practice folder, and I just need to write this npm start command, and this is going to start my application. So you see here, this is getting refreshing. Okay, so it got refresh. So I did source app.js. So we are starting from the scratch, and this is my application. Okay, so I'm going to open my project inside my code editor. So I just need to go to the place where I have created JSX practice. So I'm just going to open it, and there you go. So this is our project. And again, like, I'm not going to use all of this file, so I'm going to delete it. So let me delete all of this source, all of the files inside source. Only inside the public folder, we need to have our index.html file. That's what we are going to use. So I have my source folder, and we are going to get started from scratch. So I'm going to create a new file here called index.js, and I'm going to import React DOM from React DOM. This is the first step, because obviously we need a React DOM to render our JSX. And what we have decided to create this. I need to refresh it actually. So you see the blank page here. So we have decided to create that simple avatar image, this Instagram image, right? So this is what we are going to create. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to create a new variable called const. I'm going to give it a name of avatar. Now this is going to be a bit mm, bigger HTML, I can say. We were writing like previously we were just writing h1, but this is going to have div, and inside that div we are going to have the image and text, right? So this is going to be a bigger JSX. So I'm going to use this syntax for writing a bigger HTML, I would say, or a bigger JSX. So you can wrap your JSX into this round brackets, and then you can get started, and you can follow the usual way of writing a HTML. This is basically JSX. So this is my container, and inside that container, I'm going to use image tag. I'm going to close it for now. And then I'm going to use another div where I'm going to put the name of the person. So say, suppose I'll start with John Smith. Okay, but we need to load some image here. And I'm not going to put all of those images inside a folder here by copying and pasting. I like using stuff which is online. So I'm going to use Lorem Pixum is a site. It's a very good website which has provided a ways of importing and loading and showing images inside any of the projects. So like I can use this dog images or any other images I want, some random images. So you just need to copy this. So go to the lorempixum.photos.com, copy this URL from here, and I'm going to go back to my code editor, and I'm going to use that as a source here. I'm going to paste it. So basically, I'm taking, instead of copying and pasting images into my source folder or creating asset inside my project folder, I'm referring all those images from the online service which Pixum has provided. So this is going to load those pictures and going to render it into the image tag. Let's put some alt text also here. So I'm going to put like, this is my avatar. So I'm just going to call it avatar. Okay. And we have our JSX element created. Let's render it using React DOM. I'm going to use React DOM dot render method. And we know like this takes two different arguments. The first one is our JSX element. So I'm going to put my JSX element. And then we are going to target this div here, right? This div where we want to render our JSX element. So I'm going to target that element. So dot get element by ID, and I'm going to pass root here. Root is ID of that element. Now if I save, and if I go back and look into my React application and refresh, see that? So these images are actually coming from that online service Pixum. and I have my avatar name here, right? Now, this is just a raw HTML. We also know like how to use CSS inside JSX. So let's apply that CSS knowledge and we will try to make something like this. Maybe the image with the rounded corners and text in the center of that. They're like vertically aligned, center aligned. Let's try to do that. So for that, we need to write some styles. So let's go ahead and write some styles. So first of all, I'm going to write container style. I'm going to call it container styles. And I'm going to use a property called text align. And you need to remember, right? In CSS, we write something like this, text dash align, but this is JavaScript. And in JavaScript, this hyphen has a special meaning, right? So we cannot write something like this. So we need to write something like this. So text align, and I'm going to text align to the center. And I'm going to use this container style for my div. Okay. So that, you know, that image and text are going to center align. So I'm going to just come here and use my style property, and I'm going to pass my container styles object to it. I'm going to save, go back to my application, and now if I refresh, I think I did some typo. So container styles, and here I forgot to put the I, container styles. If I come back and refresh, see that? Now the image and the text are like center aligned. Now let's put that beautiful corner radius, you know, so that make this image rounded corners. So I'm going to come back and create some more styles here. So I'm going to create styles for my images, image actually, not images. So I'm going to create new variable called image styles. And I'm just going to use a round corner radius property here. Corner, again, I don't need to write something like this. I need to write something like this. Corner radius, and I'm going to give it a corner radius of maybe 100 pixel. And probably I need to put it into string. That's how it is going to work. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to put this next line. And I'm again going to use style attribute. And I'm going to use image styles. That's the name of my object. And corner radius 100 pixel. Let's try to save, go back to the application and refresh. And somehow it's not applied with maybe. So let me try. Okay, this is not working because I'm using the wrong property here. So I need to use border radius property, not corner radius property. So I'm going to save and I'll go back to my application again and refresh and see that it's looking perfect, right? Looking similar to this. Maybe it's bigger than that. So we can make it smaller also if we want, but and let's try to add some border here and let's see how it looks. So I'm going to use, that's a border radius property. I was using the wrong property there, corner radius. I'm going to use a border of say, I think let's go with 2 pixel, probably solid pink border. Let's see how it looks. So I'm going to go back and refresh now and see that. I mean, it's looking not exactly how it is, but we are very near, right? So this is how, you know, this is how I learn things. I mean, going into the real world, like I went to the Instagram, I pick up the small element, small part of it, and I have recreated it here, right? And using some of the online services, like I have used this Pixar for showing my images. So this is a great way of learning things. So as like we know JSX, and this is how we can apply the knowledge of JSX. Now you must be thinking like how we can render all of these elements, right? Using JSX. So you can do that. Actually, if you want to do that, you can do that as well. You just need to put it into like you need to create more avatars and you need to put more avatars here. Like maybe I need to copy this from here and put it into another div, right? But this is not going to work because I need to have another container outside like this. And then probably I can put this, I can cut from here and put it here. And then probably I can copy this div and put another div here. And if I save, let's try to change this name to something else. Sonia Mishra, something like that. And now if I come back and if I refresh, you see two different elements getting rendered here, right? They're vertically aligned. Obviously, we need to write some styles to make them horizontally aligned. But this is how we can like write and we can replicate that Instagram element using React. That's what I'm trying to do here, right? So we have just written, but I mean, copying and pasting. Again, we are writing the same old style HTML. We are copying the HTML, pasting, and we are changing all of this John Smith, Sonia Mishra names. Suppose I need to add a third image here again, I need to copy and paste. So we need a better way of writing JSX, I can say. So this is just a tip of the iceberg, right? I mean, we just learned JSX, but we don't know like how we can use JSX to its full power. That's what we are going to learn in the upcoming video, where we are going to take all of this JSX knowledge, this smaller element, I mean, writing content in JSX, we'll take this writing content in JSX knowledge and we are going to put it into creating smaller components and passing all of this John Smith, this image name, this image style, all of these things as a props, because they are like properties, right? They're going to change. They are the dynamic part of my application. This is not static, right? This is again, I'm using JSX, but in a static way. So once you know like uh, how to make, how to divide your application into smaller components and use those components, plug all those components together to make the entire application. So if I come back to Instagram, I can give you the example, right? This is just a small component here, but I'm reusing this component to render the other avatars here. This is one of the component which is showing the image, right? This is one of the component. This is one of the component. So these are all small different components made using JSX. So we are going to take our knowledge of JSX, writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript together, using their strength and writing them together. We're going to use this knowledge of JSX to create components. We are going to put all of these things into a component style. We're going to pass props, and we will see the better way of creating these avatars together. So I'm just going to remove this div for now, because I'm going to commit this code so that you can use it for your practice. So this is it. I think we have learned a lot about JSX. We have covered a lot of ground around JSX, and we have tried implementing it in real world. We took the example of real world application, and we have created our own avatar element using JSX. And I think I'm going to stop here. I think we are good with the journey of JSX. So this is the first video, day one of Learn React in 10 Days series. So I think that this is good. I'm going to conclude this video here. And if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, share it with your friends. I mean, sharing is caring, right? So let your other JavaScript friends, React friends know about this course, Learn React in 10 days, so that they can also learn React in 10 days. And this is possible. I mean, these videos will be long, but these long videos are going to give you a lot of in-depth knowledge of React for sure, and a lot of practical knowledge from the real world. So I think I'm going to stop here. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe to my channel, share with your friends. I think that is really going to help me, keep motivated to create all of these free videos for you guys. So see you later. Bye.